Well, we did have Raph, and now he's gone. So
we'll bring Raph back later. Forget it. And with that, I guess let's get it going, and say welcome back to everybody who's not in the 5 square Zoom, soon to be 6 square Zoom, to another Malazan book, not Book of the Fallen, Malazan video, Malazan World expansion video, but one that we've been waiting for a super long time. I've been so excited. I was actually just sitting there waiting for all these folks to finish up so that we could do this, because I've just been thirsting to talk, and the Discord's been blowing up. But I have some of my absolutely favorite people here. I don't know what order they're in on your screen. Well, actually they do, because they'll show up for you how they are for me. But I have Quick Jen here with us, the Niflrog himself. We got Cal from Really Good and Kind, and the Counselor of Moonspawn to talk about The God Is Not Willing. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Quick Jen, what's up?
Not much. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this book. This is pretty much everything I love about Erikson books right here in one novel.
Yeah, I was thinking it'd be cool just to like go around the circle and get like initial impressions and just see what everybody thought maybe, and just overall kind of how it fits in and what you liked and didn't like or whatever. And then we'll just kind of embrace the chaos and see where we go from there. I'll start on the bottom right and we'll come back counterclockwise or something, to be fair. And we'll start with the Counselor. I specifically was waiting to see what you thought, because there were some really interesting pieces that jumped out, and I guess we should say full spoiler, so if you haven't read this yet, then go bail out. But I think you guys will do some maybe non-spoiler stuff too that you can go check out. But what did you think, Counselor of Moonspawn, because this had some stuff that would be of interest for you in particular?
Yeah, overall I enjoyed it a lot, and in my opinion it has been the most accessible Malazan book so far, written by Erikson, and I actually kind of like that, because I had just finished the main 10 for the second time.
Perfect timing.
And I actually enjoyed that God Is Not Willing wasn't super hard to read. And I have to say, I really, really enjoyed, especially Rand's perspective. I think we're probably going to talk about him a lot.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I think it was a really, really great coming of age story. And yeah, I loved how he also got a lot of perspective and point of view. So it was great.
That's one way to come of age, I guess, right, Cal? It's pretty the Innocence Lost, I guess, is a big theme too. But what did you think, Cal? You were, I guess we were all on board. Let's be real, right? We were all pretty much fanning out over it. So let's just get that out of the way and get to what we actually liked about it.
Super excited to read this book. Like, I thought I was going to have to wait until November. So when I was able to get my hands on a copy of it, I blew through it. But it wasn't in the format that I usually like, and that is bugging the heck out of me. And that's colored my experience of the book just a little bit, so I really want to reread it. But I think all of the main themes that we get in Malazan are all there. They're just kind of done more condensed, and in some cases a lot better than previous attempts at that same sort of theme. But we'll get to that.
And Raph has joined us now with his flatmate Tom. They're back. So we're back to a 6 square setup. So for everybody who's wondering where the heck Raph and Tom were, they're back. And I'll put links down to Raph's channel. But Raph, introduce us to Tom if you would. And thank you for joining us as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sorry, my phone overheated because we both have floods in Germany and too much sun.
Oh my gosh.
So this is Tom, my flatmate. He's been living with me for 3 years, I guess, at this point. He's started reading Malazan Book of the Fallen a while ago, got stuck with Told the Hounds, and then decided to read The God Is Not Willing. And apart from that, he does a lot of stuff like pack packages for me and shit like that.
Funny enough, I've found out recently that Malazan Book of the Fallen has been recommended to me like for 10 or 15 years by several people, but most usually with the German name, which sounds kind of silly.
Oh, so is that right?
Never got it before, and
never realized that it was the same book.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. Niflrog, what did you think?
First of all, I really like the book. I like the change in style. That's one of the things I respect about Erikson, is how he can reinvent his style. Because you have this change in tone in the different books of the Book of the Fallen, and then when he goes to Kharkanas, it's an extreme change in style. And then now in Witness, is like another super jump in style. The guy can reinvent how he writes. It's incredible.
I don't think the style is any different. I think it's tighter, but I think it's still the same thing.
I do think it's a different style. I do think they are entirely different styles.
I do the same thing.
And I like it's still Erikson.
Yeah.
But he does things differently.
You're both correct.
I like how the themes he explores. He's now dealing with things he didn't go too in depth in the Book of the Fallen.
Yeah.
He has
I will agree with that. I agree with that.
That's cool. Very
cool. Things that I didn't like, I can think of anything. I think it's a really well executed. Like with the change of style, it comes also he like adjust, for example, the length. It's really short. I was joking the other day that because there's no wheeling is 0.8 Gardens of the Moons. Mm-hmm. It's not even one Garden of the Moon, which is the shortest Malazan book in the Book of the Fallen. So it's shorter.
It's basically one Forge of Darkness.
It works. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's basically one Forge of Darkness, which is also super short.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it actually works with this style. So I cannot think of anything that I didn't like that needs to be mentioned. I think it was very well executed.
And I know Quick Gen loved it. It had everything that we always kind of nerd out about.
Yeah. It was, I think, almost deceptively straightforward in that it doesn't leave questioning, and yet there's so much there to dig into once you start. So there's you don't feel lost most of the time, and yet there's a lot more that's going on, I think, than just what's on the surface.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a lot packed in, right?
As much.
Huh?
Sorry, what?
No, there's a lot packed in.
Yeah. As speaking of deceptively calm surfaces, there's should we start with Stillwater?
Yeah. Oh my God. Look, you're just creating the best segues ever. She is an epic character. I love the whole like backstory thing. I can't wait to hear what, that's already like a whole spin-off series right there. You could just follow Stillwater around, you know what I mean, and make a bunch of novellas, like, but also like pretty complex and deep in a way too, right? Who's going?
Very well named in that when we first meet her, there's this idea that it's just a joke, right? Stillwater's run deep, and she is not deep. She's anything but deep.
Yeah.
And yet I think almost as soon as we realize that she's I think we know fairly early on that she was one of the nobles in Unta, and that she had studied under a master of Mianis, and that things start clicking. Like, there's a lot more going on with this one than just sort of this not very bright, not a mage assassin.
That's like the best joke in the book.
Yeah.
Like, you then find out that she is like this super high status noble that has a seat in the council, and she also was a lawyer before becoming an assassin, and was like that world of
an
lawyers.
Assassin mage.
Yeah,
not just an
mage.
assassin. An assassin mage.
She's not a mage. She just invented that role.
Yeah, she's just straight up innovator.
Yeah.
Eat your heart out, Sam Ardev, right? That's a straight up innovator right there.
No, we don't find out till the end that she's a noble and a lawyer and all of that, which was fabulous. But at the very beginning, she's like, don't they ever wonder why I'm not trouncing around in Unta in fancy dresses? That she could have had this whole other life, and this is what she chose.
Yeah.
Yeah, the noble
Totally.
part we find out when she talks to Cotillion, and Cotillion's like, is there more to you, or are you really that shallow?
Essentially, going back on the entire thing with Annex Row, it has to be an act. And sure enough, as soon as that conversation is over, yeah, of course it's an act.
Yeah, totally. And it's hilarious too. Like she's actually like where I think a lot of the comedy comes from too, because like she's also where a lot of the badassery come from, but she's funny, dude.
I just love that scene when she goes into Emerlan, and it's fascinating that everyone calls it Emerlan at this point. But anyway, she goes into Emerlan and just decides to maybe rob a barrow because there's one.
And it's and this is the one where she got first for a change.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The whole grave robbing part is super fascinating. It's like, you're a noble, you're a lawyer, we have a seat on the council, but what you do, you go grave robbing.
See, I think there's more to that, but I don't think it's coincident. Like you said, she doesn't need money. She's not really interested in money. And I don't think it's coincidence that she's coming away with things like this scarf. And I feel like there was something up with those rat teeth as well. That the grave robbing, there's something else that she's doing with those barrows.
She's kind of like cut from the same kind of cloth as like Shadow Throne and Cotillion, where it's like, oh, it seems like all these kind of bumbling, idiotic moves and whatever, but like there's like some kind of common thread running through there that we'll figure out.
I'm just gonna have to admit this up front, is I feel the same way about Stillwater as Counselor feels about Animander Rake.
Straight
like,
up.
I think I'm actually in love.
Do you have
She's
a big
so
poster
mean.
of her above your bed?
She definitely has better dialogue than Animander Rake, though.
Or Benga, or everyone else.
I love the part where
he pretty explicitly lays it out by the end, and honestly, I was kind of hoping maybe we'd have another Puss situation where you're just never quite sure if she's really that
badass.
If she's an idiot or a genius.
Yeah. No, I love too, because she's like at the beginning, they're like, dude, get in your warren, like help us out or whatever. And she's like, just look away, guys. Like, I'm not going into a warren. She's like, I'm just gonna like be doing some sneaky stuff. Don't trip.
That's frankly something I'm expected in the end, that after they saved everyone into Emerlan and fought Pallet and everything else, that you just say something like, "No, I'm not a mage. I'm just being sneaky. And I just let you somewhere into the shadows. You didn't even know where you were or something."
Yeah. It's like, oh, we're just.
Counselor?
Yeah.
Speaking of warrants and Emerlan, does she actually access Emerlan, or does she just call it Emerlan and it's actually Mianas? And I've been wondering, because at the end, when she takes the group of Teblor into the Shadow Warren, I mean, we know that the Teblor are resistant to magic because of the blood oil and everything, and the Ototaral influence. And as far as I remember, mages can use magic in proximity to Teblor because there are several instances in which mages try to attack Karsa with warrants. However, what happens if a Teblor or a Toblakai tries to go into a warren? Does that work the same way? Because of their...
It does. They have to have protection of a soul and a knife.
Karsa goes
what
to
they
a
have to have.
warren in Deadhouse Gates, in House of Chains.
House of Chains, the beginning,
because he's in,
goes to the
in
shard.
And in Reaper's, in Reaper's Gale.
The thing is that, so the thing is that I think that Emerlan and Mianas are the same thing with different manifestations. Because remember in the Book of the Fallen that Cotillion is talking, I don't remember with whom, and he's talking
the dragon,
and he's saying like, why is it that the dogs, I think it's with Grub, it's like, or with Panic, like, why is it that the dogs never run in straight lines when there's no obstacle? And the kid is like, because what you're saying is not what there really is here. And I think in the end, Mianas and Emerlan are exactly the same thing.
I think it's made obvious. It's like the terrain is different depending on who's accessing the warren. but it still has the same basis of power. But my understanding was that those are different places in time in the same spot.
It could be too.
Yeah, maybe. There's also in like I think it was Stonewielder when Kiska and Leoman are in there a lot. There's like all these places and civilizations that live there and stuff. You know what I mean? So there's a lot more to that too.
You mean the book about Kiska and the mustache and the person carrying the mustache?
Orb Sceptre and Throne, dude. That's hilarious. Everyone hates that part. I think that's the best.
About the warrants, wasn't there a part in the book where they said that since the Crippled God or whatever happened then, the warrants don't work anymore like they used to do, and that they're now somewhat otherwise aspected so that they kind of bleed into each other more than before?
Well, like chaos is still there.
They were doing
right?
that the entire time. They were still. Yeah.
I obviously have no clue what happened in at the Crippled God, so I have no idea if there's any foreshadowing into that.
Let me ambush you guys because I want to talk about this and get you guys on the record about this. This is one of the ones that wasn't in the bullet points that I sent, but there was all the Aquarium Coin New Warren stuff in there, right? About like, and people were doing readings with those, and like people were obviously accessing gnarly different kinds of fireballs now.
Yeah, they have like the electricity warrant.
Yeah, I think this is the payoff for the kind of that tail end of Icarium storyline in Book of the Fallen. That really, because it's one of those things that always kind of stuck with me. In
it's teed up and then left.
When we get that framing of this Book of the Fallen is the story told by the Crippled God, and the story of those who saved him and sacrificed themselves for him. The Icarium storyline there doesn't really play into that. That really is so it felt like the purpose of it was to set up a new magic system for future books, and now here how many years later we're seeing it,
and it's dope.
You see like you see like the runs, and you see like the runs and the new warrants are named after those tiles or new tiles that the ghost or whatever of Feather Witch casts uses in Dust of Dreams when she names them new, like Blue Iron, Star Wheel, Knuckles, and whatnot.
I forgot about that.
Twice Alive, all that.
Yeah, that's where those new aspects come from. So Icarium walks into whatever at the end of Reaper's Gale and puts his blood into his new warrants, like Karul does in Kharkanas, as I have now learned. And those new warrants need to be aspected in a way, and that I guess happens over time or whatever. But yeah, I feel like
it's basically whoever discovers it and starts to use it. It's a new realm. So the further you explore into it, the more that you're projecting that place exists. And so the longer you go out in it, the bigger it becomes. And if you're the first one, you figure out the secrets. That's what Sin and Grub were doing. They figured out there's new ones. You get there through the dead house, and we're going to go figure out where the throne is, basically.
This is like my question. Why are those called runts? Is it because of Mappo runt, or is it because Sin and Grub, whom everyone else just always calls the runts, are the first to actually explore those warrens?
I think it's clear that is because of Mappo.
The counselor thought it was because of Mappo, right?
It's like a wink of Mappo. Because after all, it's Icarium warren,
So did Mappo, did Icarium actually name the runs? And does that mean that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, because he doesn't remember Mappo.
I think that's a metafictional instrument to poke at the reader.
But I just had that moment again where I had to wonder if he could possibly ever remember Mappo. So
I know.
I think he remembers. My interpretation is that by the end of the Crippled God, he remembers everything already.
Really?
You think so? I don't think so.
I have two theories about the runs. The first one is that they're just going to be used as a divination poker chips for a game that's played with Deck of Dragons later.
100%. They're going to mix together. Nice.
Yeah. And the runs are the ones that are.
But we don't see a deck reading actually in the.
True.
in any of the
Yeah, because no one dares to
So I
use the
think-
deck like
Yeah.
really.
I think the deck has been replaced by the
Maybe.
fronts.
So that means
What's the
there's gonna
second
be
one?
Master of the Runts.
That will take many hundred of thousands of years because cruise warrants were used for what 100,000, 200,000 years before
Who-
a master
Who's
of
going
the
to be the
deck was
master of the
chosen.
runs?
It
I
won't be
don't know.
decided now.
Oh.
Binger.
It takes a lot of
But here's the
decide.
thing. Here's the thing, Cal. What we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves a deck of dragons and a bunch of runs, and then we sit down and play a poker game with those things.
That's
And then
pretty
I
epic.
raise you 3 blue iron.
So, what was Ganos called in the runs? He had like a name in there, right?
Twice alive.
Twice
Twice
alive.
alive.
Twice alive. Yeah, and who's the unloved lady? That was either the Mybi or Tavor.
Yeah.
I think Tavor.
Yeah.
The
So
ritual
that means
makes it
she's
look
got kind of
Thor.
like a cult following going somewhere, probably.
It
or
has to
something.
be it has to be Tavor because Nilgan describes the ritual that he sees like in honor of the twice loved lady, which is a reenactment of Tavor killing FatherSon.
Mm. Yeah.
and
But-
then an orgy. If-
Speaking of
yeah,
Tavor, when you
yeah.
said who is the master of the runs, I mean, it's probably not going to happen, but I spontaneously had to think of Tavor because of the snake children and how they approach her as mother. And so she's kind of the mother to the runs in Crippled God, you
Yeah.
know? So of course that doesn't mean that she's going to be a mistress of the runs or anything, but just
I mean-
an association.
But that's
love
like an
it.
interesting thing. Like, what happens to those people that survive the Crippled God? Because apparently the story, at least part of the story, kind of made it back to Janabakis and Quantali and so forth. But what happened to those people? Are Tavor and Ganoas just riding off into the sunset on like Kachain Jamal or whatever? Or what happens there? Like, where are all those people? I mean, we know that Fiddler is in Malaz City fishing
Yeah.
and playing like the fiddle, but what happens to the rest? Like, where do they go?
It looked like Quick Gen wanted to jump on that.
I don't know, does Book of the Fallen exist as a book in world?
I think it's for like it's like in Kamenzad's world, right? Like
It's not
Yeah.
in the
I think
Malazan.
that's sort of the
But
point.
does it
Yeah,
exist within their world? As in,
It's in the world to which Kamenzan returns.
because
I
they
think.
even dismiss it, right? Because some of the Marines are talking about like the Bonehunter
Yeah.
stuff, and somebody else is like, "Yeah, that's bullshit," you know, basically, and
Yeah.
like, you know,
yeah.
So it's
Which I
a-
would-
it's a
I think
also
you're right, but
say
I
about
like the idea of it being this book that isn't, people aren't quite sure if it's real or make believe within there. Which, speaking of which, this is the first, I think, Malazan series where so far we don't know who our narrator is.
I just wanted to say that, yeah. Who writes the Witness Trilogy
Yeah,
then?
who's telling this story?
because
Who
there's
is
still
witnessing the
epigraphs and
witness
stuff,
trilogy?
right? It's a book.
I
Mm,
don't think there's a meta
I
narrator.
think they have at least at the end of Goddess Unwilling, there was a part when the Marines are standing in front of the Sea of Bones, and there they go on
You
about
like
witness,
dog?
what can't be witnessed or can't be bared.
Yeah, yeah.
so maybe it's actually written by some Marine in the future. I mean, we don't have like a frame this time around. Like, we don't have like with the Malazan Book of the Fallen, we have the framing with like this book, the oil stained pages and so forth. It's like, why is that book oil stained? Did someone like leave it in the trunk of his car or what? And with Kharkanas Trilogy, we have the framing of like Galan. But with this one, we don't have like an opening. We don't have like an actual. I mean, we have like
A
an
lot of
prologue.
historians.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the other things. Like every second epigraph is from some book in the library of New Morn.
Straight up. Yeah. Totally.
What's up with
I
New
have a
Morn? When is
question for
New
you
Morn
guys.
found it?
What's the question, Cal?
If you had to pin a theme down for this book, what would you
Yeah.
say that theme is? I know which one mine is, and I will defend it in just a minute, but I want to hear everybody else's.
Innocence.
I thought there was a couple. I think the Innocence one, like there's a father-son thing that I thought he was exploring kind of or something, or like
Oh, he's been exploring that one forever, right? it's just one of like Ericsson's main themes is father-son relationships, which may have personal reasons, but you have that in Toll the Hounds, you have it very much in Kharkanas, you have it here, obviously. I think like the main theme is like and it's like almost like on the nose for like Ericsson's like style, is definitely the climate change and refugees problem, like how to deal with that. That's like the main thing that he really wants to drive home, that if you don't like embrace refugees and help refugees for whatever political reasons, you're not worth saving anyway. Like the person who is not doing that is not worth saving, which looking at how the world works right now is exactly the point he wants to make.
And that you can only do this in cooperation, even if come the flood, you are not out for yourself, you are in there with everyone else together, which is actually a kind of weird scene, although I admit quite impactful.
Well, that's what makes it kind of a weird thing, right? That's why it hits so hard, I guess, is because it's so unexpected, right? Because they like have this whole thing, and then they go from that into like turning on a dime to, trying to help these people basically. And
I think you could possibly connect that to Innocence. And I'm thinking of Rand here, because if Rand sees that somebody needs help, he's gonna step in there and say, okay, hi, I'm gonna help you, and do for you what I can. And so there is this pure good part in him that you could also say is kind of his innocence. So I guess maybe it's about, can you find that part in yourself, or has that been destroyed? Has your innocence been taken away, and also that goodness that will make you help others? Just because, I mean, you can just extend your hand and say, I'm gonna help you.
I think there's like an innocence and goodness thing there too, that's like decoupling those things, because part of it is like the peeling back of the innocence of Rant, right? And I think kind of that stuff with the bulk people at the end, where he like ultimately does like have to kill and stuff, even after like making those vows, like I'm not going to kill and all that stuff, but then he's like, no longer innocent, and like Spindle and these dudes are like good people and just saved all, whatever. And like kind of, I forget who those three, it was like the trio of the super shady sergeants from Bald, and he like goes in and kills them, right? Yeah, which so it's like, but he's still like the moral person, because then he does all the other crap with War Bitch and stuff, right? And basically saves the world and whatever. And so I think it's kind of, it's the innocence and the loss of innocence and stuff, but he's still like good, and like you can still be moral and stuff, even if you have to like kind of take a more complicated view of the world.
Yeah, but that's like a general Ericsson thing, right? You have that way when you look at Kharkanas with. I just read the Rennick part in Kharkanas in Fall of Light, so I'm thinking of that. And you have also someone like Harlow Younger in Toll the Hounds, right? So the idea that we as children instinctively, intuitively know what is good and what is right, what is wrong. We know those things as children, and when we go through like the act of growing up, and through all the like the ringers that society puts us through, we tend to forget. And the importance is to not fully leave that innocent part of the child behind and reconnect to that part, to that intuitive understanding of right and wrong, which is what he appeals to later on with saving the refugees. So like in your heart, you know that it's right and important, and that you have to like morally, you have to extend your hand and help those people in like against like the flood and whatnot.
And I think
that's what I meant.
Yeah. I think that's what's going to be in the upcoming books too, because then it's going to go the flip side, right? Because you're going to have Rant probably like with a confrontation on Aleid Theros, because he's just going to be more,
Did Aleid Theros actually survive? Do we know that?
I don't know.
Of course he doesn't.
I don't think
I figured he's dead.
No? You think that all those people are just dead and there's just like a handful of...
Yeah, of course. Unless he pulls an Ascendancy card, something like that. But I don't think the series will go on that path, because what Ericsson had said is that the series is trying to explore the sequel of the consequences of whatever Karsa did.
Oh, that was my theme.
So
Fuck you. Fuck
I
you.
don't think he
you.
will stick. I don't
Oh, I
think
hate
Erickson
you.
will stick in the Rajasthan. He has to go to Lether and Seven Cities to see what Karsa did there. So I don't think the series will continue too much in the Rajasthan, which is where
Wow.
Karsa is.
It is. It's the next logical step down the line. The consequences.
We start in the place that Karsa started his journey as well.
Oh my God. So you think he's going to Lether now?
Either Lether or Seven Cities. I think it's Seven Cities.
Yeah.
Nice. See, well, this just shows you what an idiot I am. I didn't make the refugee, like modern day refugee connection or that. So there you go. That's why I rely on you guys.
What I will say is that what I will say in response to Ralph is that in a way the refugee crisis connects with the Innocence, because in one of those last scenes where the Templars are invading, you can see how naive and in some cultural sense innocent the Templar society is. They come like, we're gonna smash the Malazans, and the Malazans defeat them like without any effort. Had the first in Silver Lake, and then when the flood came, had the flood not arrived at that moment, they would have been annihilated. In one point, there is Bailey's like looking at her sword, and it's like, this fucking sword is useless. This type of war has made this obsolete, and that is a kind of naivety, like a kind of innocence, like
like he brought a knife to a gunfight, basically, and that's
exactly
literally that is what happens.
On that note, I'd have a theme. Sorry to cut in, but it's sort of on topic. The thing that I'm seeing mostly in the book as a theme is the acceleration of time. Because after 300,000 years of essentially more or less tribal warfare with a couple of nations strewn all over the globe, the Malazan Empire controls essentially everything for all I know. Those after Karsa was some sort of force of nature as a single Templar. 8,000 of those couldn't cut a single Malazan down because they've got new technology, the new warrants of electricity and so on. This all points to what some vast progress that has just happened or is about to happen, and how the entire world is going to change over that. So I'm sort of expecting some kind of industrialization theme or something on that note.
Here's a question, which kind of goes with the environment stuff too, right? I joked in the Discord that it was like Annex froze like the Matt Coffin or whatever, like using the fireworks to like make the Iron Maw. And so that kind of goes with what Tom's saying, right? Is that they are on the brink of this like industrial revolution potential. I don't know how much it's because of Karsa or whatever, but dude, it definitely is going down, right? And that's going to have implications. This the innovation, I think, of the Marine Legion, where it's like, oh, there's no mages, there's no munitions, right? Like, and then it's like, oh, actually our munitions are even more badass and we have a shit ton of them.
But here's a question though.
I think that means my joke from like 3.5 months ago is going to come true now, because I made jokes in the quiz about I would use a warning of caffeine and gunpowder, and now it seems like there actually is going to be some sort of gunpowder based warren, which is hilarious to me. But also I'm jealous.
So here's a question though: would Karsa Orlong have been able to charge Silver Lake and come through?
It wasn't.
But the first time.
No way, dude. No
way. Yes, because it's a matter.
Yeah, he got caught the first time, exactly.
Not
because it's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same an army of 8,000 Templar and 3 random idiots doing a raid. It's like
I just love the fact that
I love that they call it that.
The idiot attack. I love it.
The idiot attack.
What about?
We read our Lovecraft. We know all about blind idiot gods, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love the Damask storyline. That's got to be like one of my favorite parts of the whole thing, because that like has all the. I thought he was doing the whole father-son thing, and what does it mean to like be a good person too. Like I thought the whole Damask thing, that would be like a dope ass book that you could do like a Memento style kind of book where it was like the guy was like, you know, and run it like have two parallel stories where it seemed like it was two different people, but then have it be the same person and have them be overlapping. And then you realize like this dude who's like mentoring and like whatever, showing this guy the road and caring for this young kid is like the dude who was like hunting down and enslaving and stuff. And then you find out at the end, but like, dude, that's a gnarly storyline.
Here's like, I'll go back to that in a second because it kind of fits into that. Am I like the only one who read like large parts of like all of that early part in Silver Lake and the defense of Silver Lake against like the tribes and everything? It read so much like a classic Western story to me, like with everything around that, like your classic, like half like rotten down boomtown being defended by some soldiers against like that tribal attack, and on the other hand you have like the good tracker who was like the evil tracker before, which goes like all the way back to your like Fenimore Cooper last Mohican kind of stories in a way. I feel it takes a lot of like topics from that and themes from that and just does like a fantasy thing about it.
It's a fantasy Dances with Wolves is what you're saying.
Something like that, yes.
I don't think he threatens the bear until it eats him and Dances with Wolves. I don't think he does.
Yeah.
But I have to say, he went out in a way I did not expect. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Because at the end, it's like, well, he was kind of like a terrible person, but at the same time, you know, he's capable of being a good person, which is what makes it, I think, hurt. Yeah. Is that he really had learned. And
I'm glad he died.
Yeah.
Glad he died?
I'm glad he died.
What he wants to do with the time that is given us.
Well, yes,
sorry, but
he released that monster so that he killed my Kachin people, and I hate him for that.
Well,
yeah. What the fuck is all that about? I have no idea what
Ericsson's problem with the Kachin. He loves to put scenes with the Kachin being the victims of genocide. Damn.
The victims and also like the perpetrators.
Gale, and now again. As well,
people can't catch a break.
Who was that? Whoever that guy was,
they had their time.
That god, though, yeah.
Like, yeah, because they had him chained up in there, and then he was pissed off.
We don't know if they chained him.
Well, they were the ones who pissed him off.
No, they discover him and they attack him. Who knows who chained him there? And
his
why?
believers, I think that's said pretty explicitly, at least the mists.
Yes, but that falls into the trick of taking at face value what someone conjectures.
Yeah,
that
was gnarly. That guy
doesn't
goes
prove
nuts.
anything. That's a conjecture.
What's cool about the Damask thing though is that I think that's like kind of the whole point too, is like he has to, the whole thing is like him coming to grips with himself of like, yeah, I'm this terrible person.
And it comes back to that theme of consequences, sort of just like you can change and you can try to do better, but that doesn't mean the consequences of your past actions aren't going to follow you, that they don't deserve.
There's no redemption, but you should still like do, you know what I mean? Like
I think actually redemption is a good word, because I think that Damask considers himself beyond redemption, but doesn't see this as an excuse not to try to redeem himself as far as he can. And that's I think that reconnects to the entire Innocence.
That's what I mean by he actually learned.
Yeah.
He actually learned to be a better person.
Totally.
If old Damask would have left that collar on him right there at the beginning, and then that would have been it.
Yeah, there is no redemption, right? There's only just being better from here on out, like freaking, you know what I mean?
But I feel that's like the other like huge Erickson thing in like every Erickson book. It's like you do the right thing because it's the right thing.
Yeah.
And you don't look about whether you will survive or not. You don't look into whether it will redeem you or not. You do it because it is objectively the right thing to do.
And he was cool with that, right? He's like,
well, that search, because like very early on, I want to say like chapter 1, where Spindle gives has this whole internal monologue about how it's not about redemption, it's about that search for redemption. Which is what we see in Damask and what we have not yet seen in Karsa, and that I think that this is sort of leading up to, right?
Yeah, and like he even shows up and says some stuff about like, oh, I can't, you guys got to do stuff for yourself. Like,
oh yeah, and that dream that
somebody has. It's just a random Teblor.
Oh right, it's the guy who loses his leg to the wolf trap.
Yeah, which that guy's going to be something, obviously.
Wallow, something like that. I have no idea. That dude, yeah, he has that dream of Karsa. But what?
Yeah.
So what the fuck happened with the Solaris blood oil son?
Dude.
Okay, so that
Son of Darkness shows up, freaking takes care of shit.
That has like 9 layers to what's going on.
What annoys me the most is that if that could be healed, why is it that nobody ever thought of healing her?
Well, that's
exactly, no matter what you guys say, and I'm going to let you guys do all the talking on this, but no matter what you guys say, all it amounts to is what a badass banger is at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What a badass banger. Yeah.
Yeah. On that note, I need to point out again the thing when he healed Stillwater and healed her finger and chose to make an illusion of a wound on the thing, and almost got cut up because of that.
Yes.
Chef's kiss.
But yeah, so the whole like blood oil healing thing, I think there's like 2 reasons why no one ever tried. On the one hand, Silver Lake being bumfuck nowhere doesn't have anyone with magical knowledge of like blood oil or anything. That's like the one thing. The other thing is that our society is uncaring. We don't have we do, you don't, general health care or anyone looking out for like health. Health is something that is very much about those who can afford, and society is very much into taking advantage of those who can't afford health.
I think there's a lot of victim blaming going on there too. They look down on her. That they don't see her as a victim of this. It's they're, or rather, I think they do see her as a victim, but they also hold her accountable for it. And
there's a
and it discusses
the thing that I think undoes the whole thing is when Stillwater says, because you don't deserve it, right? When they're in the middle of that whole thing, he says, because you don't deserve it. And that's like the big lie that was able to be undone in that whole thing.
Yeah, because it's like the same thing with like homeless people and stuff, right? It's like they kind of like they discuss you like, yeah, you might like this person, you know what I mean? They might have done whatever, but it's like, and it's like that's kind of how they are with her. But it's like, yeah, but she's like this prostitute and she does all this and she's crazy and she, you know what I mean? And it's like,
but that's the thing that everybody in that society believed was that somehow, just by doing nothing wrong, she somehow deserved it. Because her actions after the fact make people upset.
Counselor wanted to jump in on that.
Sorry?
I think Salis is another great example of how society will treat women, because notice how she's not the victim, she's the whore. And I mean, obviously, yes, you could say she works as a prostitute, but I think the term whore here goes deeper than simply her profession. And I think if a woman is raped or is a victim of some sort of sexual violence, there's still this very, very toxic belief that she must have wanted it, or that somehow the woman is to blame. And now, especially since Salis is working as a prostitute, it might seem like, oh yeah, she's embracing it, and that's what she's doing all the time. She is kind of like letting men use her, basically. And I think there is a lot of shaming there, and victim blaming, of course. And it's like, if you see that somebody acts in a way that is not condoned by society, then society will not extend a hand to that person. Or maybe people just simply won't try to put themselves into her head and consider if she deserves their compassion or not. So
we know from the good book that
the worst part is that we know that the people in Silver Lake know that she has been intoxicated by blood oil, so that they know that this chemical has affected her.
But here's the thing, though.
Let's think about abusers that intentionally get, and it happens in House of Chains, right, where they get prostitutes addicted so that they're dependent, right? And so that's basically kind of what we're seeing here. We don't have any more compassion for addicts than we do for prostitutes. Really.
Yeah, those two like come together so often in like the real world, as you just said. Like you have so many prostitutes, no matter what gender, are also drug addicts. We as a society know that. And the people that go to those people know that as well, which is exactly what happens with Salis there. It's like she's basically, she's basically your like crack whore, to put it mildly.
And the part that made me mad, like really mad, was when I started to defend that dude on the street for bringing her food in my own head before I read further, and then I was like, nah, maybe they should have took the food and cut that dude down.
I think on top of the entire victim blaming thing is that Salis, as being imbibed by blood with blood oil, is seen as some kind of an attraction, because I think there's a sentence like when they came over to get a taste of the madness or something like that.
Yeah.
So at least all of the women in town blame her on being like that, while
not all of the women, because it's mentioned that she doesn't only have male customers; she has also female customers.
Which I was about to get to.
So it gets much more complicated, because the thing transforms into something that different people fetishize her.
Now she becomes like objectified, and like even beyond just the blame piece, like she's just like seen as like, broken or something, or not, good anymore, regardless of whose fault it is. It's just like, oh, if you've been through like a sexual assault, it's like you're, what I mean? It's just like, kind of like, let's marginalize you regardless of where the blame lies and whatever. It's like people just want to kick that to the curb and like have it be out of sight, out of mind anyways, you know what I mean? Which is like, that happens obviously in real life all the time.
And I think the other thing we see there too is kind of the generational effect of trauma and abuse, where then she visits.
Totally, 100%. That's what
Cal says something recently, that if people criticize how Damask is trying to reassure or rant about what happened with his mother, that if somebody comes to criticize that as self-serving, that he's going to debate them making a video, I can see people criticizing that already. People that have done zero research on how this kind of violence transmit from one generation to another.
And like the transmission,
like
of
with
like
zero
violence.
experience, with zero research, and they say, yeah, this is self-serving. And that's very easy to see. Like there are studies that show how the tendencies, how the correlations act when somebody is a victim of abuse, and how it goes down from generation to generation.
I didn't see that anyone wants to like read it that way. I guess but I mean, now because I don't hang out on Reddit, I guess that helps.
Yeah, does definitely.
It doesn't help that everyone's trying to get a gotcha on everyone all the time forever.
Yeah,
the moral high ground.
That's what makes rants like relationship though with what's his name's daughter.
Bayroth's daughter.
Bayroth's daughter is like, like what a freaking champ that chick is, right? Like for someone who's gone through stuff like that, guy might actually end up having like a regular like sex life or something. You know what I mean? Like because of her being like such a G. Honestly, that was gnarly. That hit hard for me.
That scene was really, really intense. And I'm not sure if I'm like fully happy with how it works, because you could possibly read it as making light of how to deal with trauma, but it doesn't fully. But what mostly stuck out is like Erikson is a fantastic writer when it comes to like absolute like violence and whatnot and all that stuff, and he's really good at like writing philosophy and shit. But he can also be incredibly tender when it comes to these like very tender moments. You have that scene with her and as I said, like I'm bad with names, but
Alk or something like that.
Paik, with Paik and Rand in that forest clearing. That is like written in such a tender way. He describes and like how that was just like really well done, just like from like a writing style perspective.
Yeah. And it like on a personal level, it's like, dude, to have to contemplate like what's it like, you know what I mean? Like that's stuff, not everyone has to do that, but a lot of people do like have like relationships with people who've gone through stuff like that, you know what I mean? And it is like and it's like, I don't know, it's weird, but that was an encouraging thing for me, because it's like you can have like a partner and stuff who would like, you know what I mean, that you could like have some like sense of normalcy again, and like, you know, he's never gonna like get rid of that and stuff, but like he could have like like I said, he could have like a potentially a regular sex life, like in a relationship with this chick, you know, and that's like pretty, I don't know how to articulate like, but all the psychological benefits and whatever that have had to have been transferred for that to be a true statement.
I agree with you, and I think it's pretty explicitly stated that this didn't like heal all his wounds.
Right. Yeah.
That this didn't fix him. It's just about like him, like her trying to give him back something that was taken, so that too is not one of the costs of what he's been through. That said, I was still uncomfortable with it because I see Rant as a kid in my head. And it was, and like, I know he's not, and I know he's of an age, and like that was all appropriate within that society, but like, it was, I think I was uncomfortable because in that scenario, I'm seeing myself as the woman, and like I'm like, no.
Yomo vibes, yeah, exactly.
But because he's still like he's a kid.
Yeah. What is up with that, by the way? And that's a good question, because why is that? You know what I mean? It's like he was like 20 years old or something. He's like basically the same age as all them, more or less, you know, but it's like, but he's like stunted mentally. But I think it goes back to the innocence, somebody said in the Discord, or what do you guys think about that?
Said that the male Tablor mature more slowly.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or if it's things that the women say, but it certainly felt true with Rand.
I think it has to do with the mother.
He's also only half Tablor, so he should age a bit quicker.
I think it has to do with the mother.
Yeah, but I mean, it's very much about like that idea that physical and mental maturity are not the same thing, which is like one of those discussions that you need to have about like the age of consent in general being an approximation. We just like arbitrarily say this is it, and there's people over say 18 that are totally not able to actually give consent because they're like mentally not as fast or whatever. And that's kind of what makes it so weird, because we are in Rand's head a lot compared to other characters. So we realize how simple he is, his worldview is in a lot of ways.
And I think the way that Tablor usually grow up, I think they mentioned that they usually perceive a lot. They notice they watch how things are done, how you wield a sword, how you ride a horse and something. And since Rand is also always has been the outcast, you know, no friends, no adults to look up to, who's always pelted with stones wherever he goes. He plain and simply didn't have a lot of options to watch anyone.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, though. You just mentioned horse riding. It's a small thing, but I need to mention it. When did Tablor start using saddles? because it's explicitly mentioned in House of Change that Karsa, Bayroth, and Delam are not using, they're just like using like reins on their horses, and that's it. And when Paig teaches Rand how to ride a Teblar horse, they're using saddles. When did that happen, and why?
Probably the same week.
Happened when Erickson forgot.
No, it's part of the technological revolution.
No, Karsa.
On the later on plane, yes.
What, Cal?
I'm pretty sure
Karsa, Bayroth, and Delam were
a wisecracking sentence about the stirrup being the greatest revolution of the medieval period.
Exactly. What were you saying about Bayroth and them, the three idiots, Cal?
No.
Yeah, when they did the idiot attack, they were trying to emulate Karsa's grandfather, Palk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who, when he went out, didn't have anything but reins, his blood sword, and like, maybe a loincloth.
And they did
And then
emulate him,
wondered
right?
why
Because
he
he
did
went
that.
down there and got his ass kicked and then had to run away, right?
Well,
By the way,
he started randomly killing people before he even got to Silver Lake. Like people invited him into their house, and then they took
Yeah,
their
the
stuff.
son had actually saved his life because he was starving before reaching Silver Lake.
I want to know
Son
what.
tried to save his ass.
By the way, since we're on equipment of the Tableau, first I thought more or less all Tableurs were using blood swords or bear skulls. And the second thing that I was wondering, because it's never mentioned, those blood swords or blood weaponry and the like, and blood oil are super ingrained with Tableau culture, and for all I know, wherever the Tableau are migrating, they can't take seeds or anything of them with them, so they need to leave behind an awful lot of their entire culture and self view description.
Yeah, there's going to be a huge secondary market for blood oil weapons now going forward. The economy of blood oil weapons is going to be skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Oh man, when until some crappy Malazan mage tries to recreate blood oil, ends up with something like Kellic but worse. Ooh.
What?
See, that's like another thing that they're now drinking Kellic in like a apparently tamer version of Kellic. Like how are
I
they
think
doing
that was a joke.
Yeah.
That he was
I think-
joking that it was Kellic, but it was actually ink.
I think
Right.
it makes sense that they kept the name for some other
Again,
drink.
it comes
Right,
down to
I
the
like it.
economics. They're just they're copyright infringing and using it
Yeah,
for their
something-
own.
something like that.
Totally.
We already
It's
know that
like you say,
Montreal-
Jen. I think it's not anything near the true Kellic. Yeah,
Kellic is like what do you call it?
it's the blood of
Jägermeister.
a god.
Yeah,
It's like
polluted,
Jägermeister,
your
of
lost
course.
blood.
Yeah.
Essentially, Kellic is the icor of the dying god, but the
Yeah.
dying god is no more, so it can be Kellic.
Here's one
Yeah,
topic
no.
that I want to make sure that we squeeze in though, and I want to hear from Quick Jen and Counselor Moonspawn on this, because I think aside from Banger and Stillwater, the other like big badass, when I was reading, because he dropped that like nugget that said there's going to be somebody in the Witness Trilogy that's even more badass than Yadan Darrig. And it obviously is Stillwater, but the other one I thought it could have been was his sister, Delis Fana or whatever, because she's like the second most badass person, right? And we don't really get to see it, but she's like she has the potential to be like one of the dopest characters, because she saw through all the crap, the like revenge scheme stuff, and she's like epic badass. She seems like a deep character. I want to know what Quick Jen and the Counselor think of Delis, and then we can go all over her exploits.
Well, I mostly wish that we'd gotten more of her. I feel like we're kind of barely scratching the surface with her, and we haven't really seen what she's capable of. I liked the mention about the fact that she's been hanging out in Darujistan with some Ardev.
Yes.
I want to know more about that for sure. Who may or may not be Karsa's lover.
Those stories were hilarious.
Only by night.
But he does a good job, right? Because 2 out of the 3 of most epic badasses are women. So it just continues this like long tradition of like these three-dimensional epic badasses that are
Let's not forget Bliss Ronnie, because
Oh,
I
dude.
would really love
Did we
to know
actually
that
meet her in
backstory.
any book before and I'm just not aware of it? Or is this
I don't
just like
know, but
How many of you
Um,
guys searched like, holy crap, did I completely forget this character? Like, did you go online and like, who is Bliss Roll? Yeah.
and I mean, I would really love to get that backstory of her and the Yagut. And I think, is it possible that that Yagut is Synegig? Because it
Could
was
be.
a Yagut in the Yakodan, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Synegig is running around there.
Yeah.
So I
I
guess it's
I wouldn't
possible.
call it running though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Synegig just hangs out. There's also an
He's chilling
Azath,
in the Yakodan
an
then.
Azath hold tree over there. I thought it was interesting that they called the cave an Azath hold, whereas the other ones were called Azath houses.
Yeah. Which is super fascinating, right?
Yeah. The Azath hold, the thing that
The
the
Azath.
yeah. That's
But-
gnarly.
Actually, I mean, because we've been talking about female characters, I wanted to get back to Salis real quick again, if I may.
Yeah.
So, because I think when Salis is throwing out Rand after she has used him, I think that is a very good example of a dysfunctional relationship as a result of trauma.
Mm.
And Salis doesn't really know any better. She doesn't really have a good way to get Rand out of the house. So she resorts to this horrible threat. And that is actually, I believe, not that uncommon for people who have been going through something or are severely struggling with their mental health, that they will do something like that. Like, if you don't do what I want, I'm gonna cut myself, I'm gonna kill myself, and then you are to blame for what has happened. And I think, I mean, we don't really get into her head quite that much, but it would be interesting in how far she is actually aware of what is going on with her, or how much what has happened to her has basically destroyed her, I don't know, personality structure maybe. And I think when Damask is explaining what was going on with her, and that it wasn't actually her that hurt Rand, I kind of felt like this was a good metaphor, that the part of her that went after Rand is the result of what Karsa did to her. And the thing is, with people who have been going through such trauma, this result of what has been happening is so deeply, I don't know, it is really intertwined with like the pure personality part of that person, that you can't really tell it apart anymore. And so of course it's not that easy to simply, you know, separate those two. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it would be super interesting to get a deeper view into her person again after the
I think we will.
blood oil influence has been taken away.
Because right now she's hanging out with the people who like to do Gruff's armor and whatnot.
She's re-scuffing up Stillwater's shirt every time to make it look like the original one.
She's
The
moving
very first
her fake
uniform.
nipples around.
Because honestly, yeah, I know that the blood oil has been taken away from her now, but I'm wondering, can it really be that simple to, you know, really just draw that bad part out and then she's all good again?
I don't
think so.
I don't think
She's
so,
going to be
because
traumatized. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
I think
that's
we
important
said that as an
Actually
example.
not.
Sorry, Tom.
You know what, Counselor?
Sorry?
I think from what you just said, I think that the description of what happens to Salis and that scene with Rand, it seems very similar to some descriptions of people that struggle with alcoholism and do violent things while intoxicated with alcohol.
Yeah.
And they even go into domestic violence.
And Rance
and that feeling that they can't help it once they are intoxicated, but they cannot stop intoxicating themselves because they are addicted. It resembles a lot the way Erickson describes that scene, because people in that frame, they actually describe that they don't want to engage in violence against their loved ones, but they can't help drinking, and when they drink they can't control themselves, so it's really a mess. But as you say, I don't know what happens when they get some kind of treatment and they stop drinking. I don't know how they couple with that. No idea. That will be interesting to see.
Since you bring up the point of addiction, one thing that I find really interesting about Salis is that she's described as a really strong or principled character, because of course she forces herself onto Rand at some point, but it is everyone who knows what blood oil is about says that this should have happened way sooner. That she should have caved in or relapsed, if you want, way sooner. And she managed to fight this addiction, those whims, for years and years and years. And I think this makes her really strong character, really.
Definitely.
I agree. When you were talking about the whole good or bad thing that I see, I think given the situation she was in, she showed remarkable strength, and I'm with Damask on this one, where that threat to kill herself in order to make him leave was actually a sacrifice she was trying to make for him, because she knew if she stayed, she'd do it again.
Totally.
Here's the thing, though, like what I find it really interesting, like not really interesting, but important about it is with Salis as the addict in this book, and there's always an addict in every Erickson book, but with Salis being the addict here, the important aspect of it is that we tend to blame addicts for falling into addiction. And with Salis, it is because of the setup with blood oil and everything. It is very clear that that is not what you should do, because you can't blame Salis for being blood oil crazed, because that was not her choice at all. And it's important to take that, but you started drinking, you started using whatever drug you're using and it's important to show that that's not what it is. Between using intoxicating substances and falling prey to addiction, there's a huge difference, and you can't choose or willingly go into addiction. I mean, I guess you can go willingly into addiction, but it's not the normal thing. So it's important to see that you can't blame her for being blood oil cursed in a way.
Yeah, well, that's the whole commentary, I think, is even when you take away the blame part, right, she still gets kicked to the curb. And so it's ultimately, as everything, an introspective commentary on us being dickheads, right? That we just, you know what I mean?
Oh, we are.
I mean, I think it's super important to always consider, if somebody has fallen into addiction, there is so much you need to consider about that person's life story. And there are so many things that have probably led up to that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's easy to say, why did you start drinking, when you don't know what shit that person has been through that led to that. And I think it's absolutely important that Salis shows us that you cannot simply blame the addict. And I also love how she is somehow the middle ground of, or I feel like she's the middle ground of in the way that she does show some characteristics of somebody with a low personality structure, who has been struggling from the beginning because of dysfunctional family relationships, stuff like that. And then she also has that there's also this aspect of her not being to blame for what happened to her. And I think that is a super interesting setup. So
I think it's also a commentary for victims of that kind of stuff too, though, right? That it's not a you, it's them kind of a deal too, because you can kind of abstract as looking through Rant's perspective if you've gone through stuff like that, you know, or been in those kinds of relationships or had an alcoholic parent, and you go, oh my God, like this poor kid's blaming himself for all this stuff. Like, you know, he's, and you could maybe like, it's the kind of the thing that I've been told in all my relationships, which was never actually true, is, you know, it's not you, it's me. But for Rant, that was actually I think an important message that, you know what I mean? That it's like, and a way to explore that, like, which is what we love about fantasy anyway, right? You like put yourself in someone else's shoes, or you can see somebody else go through some stuff that maybe you can introspect back.
Here's a question though, is Solace, so in House of Chains, we have like one of the apparently many rapes that Karsa is like perpetrating there.
Yeah,
we have one of them kind of described where he actually puts blood oil to the lips of the woman that he's raping there.
Yeah, I think that's
that woman is Solace.
That's Solace?
Yeah,
because that's like the other thing. She's basically a kid at the time, right?
She's a teenager. Yes, she's a kid. Yes,
and
that's why all these Karsa fans trip me out. I'm like, did you guys forget the first like couple of 100 pounds? I'm like, no matter what he does, right? Like, but I guess that's the whole Damask thing.
I think that's like that's the other part, is like what the God is not willing, and hopefully like its sequels are doing, is basically giving the finger to all those Karsa fans who are like, yeah, but you know, for most of the books, he's a giant dickhead doing a lot of really terrible things.
For most of the books, what makes you think that he's different in the Crippled God?
Well, he has that. He has that really. Well, that's true. I mean, he has that really one emotional scene with
the homeless guy.
The scene is emotional, but that scene doesn't conflict with the Karsa we know.
That's true.
So that doesn't, him having that scene doesn't mean that all the shitty bullshit that he has been doing has changed in any way.
That's true. I agree, but I agree that he's probably not yet a good guy. I think
he has toned down rape. That's Ardev has made sure that he has toned down rape. That's fine, but other than that, I don't see him becoming.
He's like, guys, I don't even rape anymore, dude.
It would be bad enough if it was just like a regular person, like a human, who behaved this way and is now. But the dude's 9 feet tall, carries a giant stone sword, and slays demons for fun. So it's like
he's guts.
I don't see how people cannot like Karsa and still like Icarium, honestly. I put this at his doorstep, really. Karsa was living the culture that Icarium set up. And I'm trying to, I get that the whole having lots of genetic making sure that they did not get too inbred and there was lots of genetic mixing happening was important, but really it could have been like annual intertribal orgies instead of raping.
How do you know? My question is the interbreeding the design of Icarium or of the faces in the rocks?
No.
That was like,
remember, there's an epigraph. No, there's an epigraph that talks about refugia that the Jag Hut would set up. They would make these like little like island
experiments with lesser races.
Mm-hmm.
That's Godos Folly. I know.
That's what the later on plateau is. That's what that place is.
I know. And
so was it Aquarium or who did it?
The part of interbreeding of formalized of legalized rape that the Tableau have. Was that designed by Icarium, or was that introduced by the faces in the rocks?
That's a really good question.
For the faces in the rock, because the fact that birth, like inbreeding, actually worked in their favor in that the deformed children were sacrificed to them. So to me,
yes, but remember that they say that they crafted Karsa to be the champion of the Crippled God.
I never liked Aquarium.
They bred Karsa like this.
Sorry, I only meant that to be a short aside, not a whole like side track.
The thing is very simple. Yeah, we can hate Karsa, but actually Icarium is the greatest genocide.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have that series. Like
he has destroyed entire civilizations. Like I got angry, that entire civilization, it doesn't exist anymore.
But that's like a point. I don't want to defend Ikariam, but he doesn't seem like someone who, when he's not angry, would build up a society that's built on legalized rape. That's not Ikariam's style. He would just destroy that. Like that kind of setup would really make him angry, I suspect.
By the way, it's been a while since I've read House and Chains. Why exactly was the Labyrinth Plateau as refugee needed? Because I think that the Tartana, the Fan, and I don't know who all else are all somehow descendants of the original Toplakai.
Yeah.
So
in Stonewielder, that guy, what's his name? The Ivanar.
So it doesn't seem like actual extinction was ever in actual danger or risk.
Well, there's like this scene in House of Chains when Karsa, Bayroth, and Gale go into that cave and find that like inscription. It kind of tells that there was like some huge war, and because Toblakai do Toblakai things, and at some point, even when they're Toblakai, at some point the rest of the universe is really annoyed at them for being 9 feet tall dickheads, and decides to combine and wipe them out. And I think that was sort of what happened. It's like I guess it was the Folklore Assail or someone else decided that they really had enough of those people and decided to almost kill everyone. And then Ikariam stepped in and saved that part of the Thalakai descendant population. I think that's sort of how it worked. It's like they did something really dumb by being Toblakai. At some point, the rest of the world just had enough, tried to end it for good. And then Ikariam stepped in. It's like, well, we could just, have them in like our Teblor zoo on that plateau, and that would be good.
I think we're in for a total.
A zoo is a great way to describe it. Like they had the little, we got the Jack over here, we got the Teblor over here.
The Later Plateau is exactly like a zoo with like a breeding program for endangered crazy species.
I don't know. A zoo implies visitors.
Yeah. No, there was no tourism.
But this was like a zoo guide, I guess.
I think of it more like the Human Centipede movie, where he's like, it's for his own entertainment, right? That he's like watching and doing all this like mad scientist stuff. In fact, I think that's Quick Gen's probably onto a whole like full Crippled God reveal where like Ikariam is going to become Kalor and Kalor is going to become Ikariam, the benevolent one. And it's going to be a total reversal. And he's going to be this total scumbag, sketchy, mad scientist guy.
So we get like,
I was disappointed I didn't see that.
So we get a Niflroth Kalor's face off at some point.
Yeah.
So can we go back, because unless you talked about it before we came back out of like Tell Us, I guess, or Thilla. Did we already talk about the Marines and the Marine stuff? Also,
not enough. Only a little bit.
And we need to talk about Jack.
I want to talk about two things too. Yeah, so Marines for sure, one, and then after that, I want to make sure before we cut, I won't let anybody leave before we talk about the whole like bridge burner, ascension, monk rat trying to become a god, spindle stuff, because that's pretty nuts, and I think we'll still have to explore more of that afterwards. But let's do the Marines.
I really want to talk about Gower and Nilgan at some point, because
okay.
Nilgan's so cool.
Yes.
Nilgan's such an asshole. I like him, but he is such an asshole. I will take the
order of being annoying.
I will challenge you. I will challenge you, and I will kill you.
Have you guys have you guys ever read Farmer Giles of Ham by J.R.R. Tolkien?
No.
Yes, I have.
You should. It's a short story. And Nilgan reminds me so much of Giles' dog Garn, because he's like super brave whenever there's no risk, and he's like ducking away whenever there's any kind of risk. And once things are solved, he takes all the credit for it.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. And his brother totally tolerates him. That's why I think Gower, is that the brother's name, is like so epic, because like he just dismisses him from day one, and it's like absolutely hilarious.
I will kill you. No, you will not. Just over.
I love when he tells Rant like casually, like freaking 3/4 of the way through the book, he's like, "That's my brother, dude." He's like, just
and he's been an idiot like for forever.
Yeah, and he's just been tolerating. You're like, dude, what is up? And he's like, "Yeah, that's fine."
Rich family. Can't change that. Yeah, I just love that, like, Nilgan Gower rant dynamic when Nilgan is like, for the entire time, like, yeah, but he just tricked me. It's like, no, he didn't. He just punched you out because he's badass. Like, no, he tricked me.
So favorite Marine, Stillwater. Second favorite, what's his name? Clay Plate.
Clay Plate.
Clay Plate.
He's the one with the regulars, right? He's the one who kind of brings the regulars around because he punks those chicks in the bar.
Yes. Clay Plate is a true badass. He gets very little screen time, but he is a true badass.
What about Gruff, though? I know, Niflrog, you said you absolutely love Gruff. I think Gruff is going to be the shit. He's like such an epic character.
I actually have a marked passage.
I think Gruff is the new crop.
Yeah.
It's like a flashy guy with that very specific way of speaking with these mannerisms. He's the best scene in the entire Empire. And he's also a badass. Like,
100%.
They're me, Spindle. Why didn't you saw that his fucking head about Bulk? I will have chopped his head had he had the chance.
Yeah, he's like totally bloodthirsty as he's like putting on his white gloves, like all day.
They're me. Why didn't you chop his head, Spindle?
Well, because he would chop yours beforehand.
Gruff is my absolute favorite character in this book. Absolutely.
Gruff was my favorite character, no doubt.
I get that.
I mean, actually,
and what I wanted to say is that I have a theory about Gruff.
Which is that he's Krupp's kid from...
No, he's family of Malik Rel in some way.
Yeah, you posted that already in the Discord, right?
Why would you say? Do you have like reasons for that, or is it just you would like it to be that case?
Yes, I have reasons, but you want really to go into that? The easiest piece of evidence to notice is that if you look how Gruff dresses, he's what's described historically as a fop, F-O-P.
Yeah, that's fop. Yeah.
In the last scene, we see Shadowthrone in the Book of the Fallen, the Crippled God. He calls Malik Rel that fop on the throne. We don't see that many instances of Malik Rel being described as using very good looking, very intricate dressing. But that last scene confirms that. Other than that, there are a couple discussions about Gruff without him, but about him, that they make a link between Gruff and the Emperor. It's like, well, it goes something like, can we trust your captain? Yes, we can. Do you think this thing about the legions, it comes from the Emperor or one of his cronies from the Emperor? It's like, damn. I read some sort of a subtext there. I don't know if I'm making it out, but I think there's evidence for it.
I guess the main issue I have there is probably my usual Malazan issue, that being age of characters, because it never makes sense in my head. I'm like, how old is Malik Rel at this point? Because we don't know.
That's irrelevant. Because we don't know if he has a kid or not by the time we find him in Deadhouse Gates. He might have
that's like
a
the point.
family.
Like, how old is he in Deadhouse Gates?
No idea.
Who knows?
Say.
There's no limit to how long you can procreate for, though, Raph. Those guys will keep going forever.
In a world where you have high deno, I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like my main issue is like ages in Malazan make no sense. They're more like convenient. Spindle is old because we need like a mature love story. That's like the only reason Spindle is old.
They're like 58-year-old Marines, dude.
Like 24 years.
No, Spindle is like 50, something like that.
Is he only 50? Because that would mean like, I don't know, 20 years of Malazan Book of the Fallen plus 30 years.
Wait,
100%.
why 20 years? The Book of the
Because
Fallen.
I'm really not good with timelines. Like when does Siege of Payload?
I feel like timeline is a rabbit hole we don't want to fall down.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think they worry too much about
the Book of the Fallen is less than 10 years.
Counselor, did you want to jump in? I saw you wanting to.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Gruff, I kind of had the impression that he might be a character who is actually like way older than he seems. And he kind of gave me that vibe of like one of those characters who's only posing and pretending to be a human, you know, Ruth and Good, for example, or also, I guess, Taishren in Memories of Ice. What was his name?
Branthan?
Or Thanos.
Yeah.
Right. Correct. And he also, like Niferok said, he really reminded me of Krupp, and I actually already recorded some ramblings about part 2 that I haven't uploaded yet, and I actually talk about that there already, because he has that vibe, if you know what I mean.
Of being so efficacious too, right?
I think my favorite line from Gruff is when Spindle is explaining the current situation, and he's giving him all the orders about what he needs to do. And he goes, "Oh wait, you're a veteran. I don't need to tell you this shit."
I don't think
he's like, so he's like, so well, what do we need to do, sir? And he's like, nothing a little makeup won't fix.
Yeah.
And then he leaves. So it's like, but wait, what is he talking about? Is he talking about their situation? Is he talking about his own face? Is he talking about Spindle's face? It goes like 9 ways.
I'm pretty sure a little makeup won't fix Spindle.
At least not a shirt.
Where's the hair shirt?
Yeah.
That's like another thing, like Spindle being like this like badass old, like almost broken or maybe broken forever soldier.
Yeah.
But also like no one around him believes that he's an actual bridge burner.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, those guys are legendary. Spindle's not one of them.
Well, he's like gone from being,
he's the least of the bridge burners. Maybe.
Whereas they all believe Ohms is a claw.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's glorious. Like, I've got a claw.
Well, they all believe that Stillwater. They all believe that Stillwater's a mage.
Right? Yeah, they don't know. They don't know what to believe. They're wrong about all of it.
Do you think Spindle left the hair shirt on when him and Bliss Raleigh went to the tent? I
think the only thing I know for sure about Bliss Raleigh at this point is that the woman lacks a sense of smell.
Right? Hallelujah. Yeah, she's like, it purposefully maintains close proximity to those munitions just to like maintain no sense of smell.
Yeah. I found it interesting to see like the other side of Spindle's warren though at the end, right? Mm-hmm. Because like when we see him in when he uses his warren the first time, Memories of Ice, it's just like he drives animals crazy, and
they try to attack him and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And this time around, we just like see what he actually can do, and he really hates it because obviously he kills those animals.
Well, but and that kind of gets me to a segue to my other thing, which is like the Bridge Burner's Ascension, because was his stuff all supercharged because of that? Because like they rode that dead horse for days.
Yes, really bad background sound right now.
We're fighting with a storm.
Oh, you have a storm? We can't hear it on our end. You sound great to us.
Okay. I think the last Gale is over. So what did you say?
If you think they're all super juiced up now, Spindle is in his powers because of the Bridge Burner Ascension and the whole monk rat stuff that they talked about and all that.
Yeah, there's like a scene in the Crippled God where I don't know who it was, maybe Stillwater, someone looking at them like in their warren and seeing like how Spindle's aura kind of descends around his horse and everything.
Oh yeah, he was like crackling the blue.
Yeah. I just love the fact that we have blue iron now, so we have like the term a really powerful mage has a whole new connotation.
Yeah. And even the heavies, I love that everyone was those like total dumbasses when they're like counting, you see like how they're so, total idiots.
The best scene in the entire book.
That was freaking hilarious.
But on the other hand, I find it fascinating that in the allegedly only 10 years since the Crippled God, the heavies got themselves this pseudo eloquent Sin City God speech thingy.
Yeah, I love the conversations between Folibor and Blanket. It's glorious.
Yeah, those are a really good pair too. That has like the Dathanar. Well, you're in Fall of Light right now, so that totally has like the they're like the Scorch and the Left, right? But educated, so they're the Dathanar Prazak. So that's like definitely the Hugh Jackman, like Ryan Reynolds of the.
Yeah, I mean, they're not educated. They just know a lot of obscure words and know little to do with them. I'm not quite sure who it is. But I think the old barman at some point says, in my time, back in my day, heavies used to be idiots. And then whoever he's talking to says, they're still idiots. Oh, a 1,000 caribou pass through, and thousands of savages come from their homelands, all down to the south at some point. And a month later, some heavy says, "Oh, so that's odd."
Yeah, but see, that's like the typical Ericsson thing, like on like Squared, because Ericsson establishes like the trope of the really simple heavy in the Malazan Fallen, that like grunts and uses like 3 words and speaks slowly and whatnot. And then he goes, just like subverts his own trope by making those heavies speak like super elaborate language at this point.
Yeah.
If you have the patience for it, I actually have a marked passage of it where Gruff, very close to the end of the book, has to explain something in heavy cans to the rest of them, and it's glorious. I didn't understand words.
Let's go.
The proclivity towards over-specialization ever narrows the focus of the mind, darling, and with each narrowing increment, the interconnected relationships among all forms of knowledge and learning cease to obtain, indeed cease to matter. A career devoted to a single cog loses sight of the machinery, forgets the purpose of the mill, grows deaf to the water in the vast wheel, and thinks nothing of the grain's birth and the bread devoured. How fair it does fall.
It's like, yeah.
You idiots.
Like, yeah. No, I love that. And like my favorite like joke, there's a lot of humor in this book as well, but my favorite joke is Stillwater and its throw the spyglass. And like when Gruff just takes it and puts it on, it's not even Gruff, it's Spindler. I don't know who it is that puts it on like Annex Throw's shoulder and looks at it, and then Annex Throw's like, I need to build this like conveyance to actually hold it up. And Stillwater, you just need his shoulder to scry on.
So funny. How about when Stillwater fights Pallid? That was epic. And by the end, Pallid's like the one. That was when I said she's the Krupp and he's the Hitan, where it's like this insatiable sexual appetite then conquered by Krupp. And like, that's the same, this Hound of Shadow that's like supposed to be like epic, unkillable, is the one like running for the hills by the end.
My favorite is when she throws the stick.
Yes.
How was I supposed to know that all that Pallid needed was a bath?
Right?
Yeah.
She just wants to be friends with the puppy. She just wants to, hang out, throw some balls, and he's not having it.
This movie this book would make an epic movie because it's fast paced. It would have all the like crazy special effects, like with the munition scene and all the explosions, the flood and stuff like that, and the comedy. It would be absolutely badass.
On that note, my favorite joke in the book is when the Bright Knot Scout returns to the Temple War leader and says what you found, and what, did you see such scouts? I did. In fact, we passed one another within shouting range. I cursed them, they cursed me. I brandished my lance, they showed me their bad asses. She paused and then shrugged. I deemed they won the exchange, for the asses were hairy and ugly.
So good. Do you think we're gonna see the Jek stuff followed up? Because there's like a couple of them hanging around, obviously on the like charging ahead, but it seems like the pact with Spindle's gonna go through and they're gonna have like the amnesty and stuff, or is that just done? That was like a
I think that's what his goal is because you see in Memories of Ice when Perrin is talking to the Barghast, where he grants the Barghast special privileges like the Wiccans were supposed to keep, but oh look, surprisingly an Imperial culture betrayed them. Who would have thought? And so that's going to grant them some sort of protection, but we all know Malak Rel's a giant douchebag. So
Jen,
Earlier I said that we don't know who a narrator is. This is like kind of the first Erikson written Malazan, and it just occurred to me that if I had to make a theory right now, I'm thinking this is like Marine recruitment propaganda right here. That's what this was written as. Malik Rel, the good and kind emperor.
Oh my God!
Marines who go in and save the day.
Malik Rel is the narrator, and it's his like Joseph Goebbels like piece de resistance of.
Oh, I would just love to see the post.
Have you read have you read The Foundation by Asimov? It's sci-fi.
Parts of it.
No.
Yeah.
I read the first one, and then I tried to read the second one, and it was way too propaganda for me.
But I think this this goes on to quite important point to me, because that's the one thing that I'm really annoyed with in God is Not Willing. Namely, it's the first book from Erikson that I've read so far that completely lacks ambivalence on the Marine side. Yeah, they are all assholes and idiots, naturally. But in the end, they fight the invasion that they don't want to fight. They pity the enemy in the moment of the actual encounter. They, in the very first moment that the flood comes down, they save all those people. And essentially, all people they are up against are mostly singular evil, except maybe the Templar and with the entire climate migration thing, which is a fairly good justification. But everyone, but essentially they are fighting warrior societies that want to go out in the blaze, or backstabbers, and in essentially are the good guys, no matter how you look at it, and that's weird for an Erikson.
Let's see, that's what you should do.
I have to disagree with that strongly.
Well, that's the best. That's the best argument for Jen's findings, right?
They essentially commit a war crime, one or two. They essentially commit using mines like that. That's like a fully war crime.
Yeah, but they dig up the mines after the encounter, so no child is ever accidentally injured.
And they're actually not happy with it. But like, I mean, there's like one thing I would love to see. Like,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they are happy. They did it.
Yeah, that's true.
That doesn't absolve them.
War crimes.
I think that's.
So I don't think they can be seen as good from any perspective. If you put yourself in the perspective of a Templar, the Malazans are effectively guilty of the extinction of the Templar race.
So he's like two things.
No, it's Tarsus' fault.
Because he's not willing? Oh, wow.
No.
Well, he's a lot of things, but not willing has rarely been his main fault so far. But the point is, like, there's like two things.
What I will agree is that this book is way too explicit. And I understand that Erikson has been hammered a lot because he leaves some things ambiguous. Like, he doesn't say when there's a rape scene, he doesn't break the immersion and says, and remember, kids, rape is bad.
Rape is bad.
But in this book, he essentially does that.
Yeah,
like essentially, he has to break the immersion and says, and this that is happening is not good.
I don't think, and I'm dumber than you guys, but I don't think he dumbed it down for us, though.
When Stillwater talks about giving 10 people a written order that they'll all come back with, or 10 heavies a written order, they'll all come back with 10 different interpretations of the text.
Yeah.
I felt like that was sort of this, and so I'm going to be really clear and straightforward this time. Like, there's no doubt where I'm coming from on it.
And I can imagine. Yeah.
He's a lot less ambiguous about it, and I do miss the ambiguity. I always like.
I mean, it's not a criticism because it fits the way the book is written, but
is not to say
my obscure shit.
I don't think he was ambiguous in his statement on whether or not rape was bad. He just was not explicit. So ambiguous is the right word.
Yeah.
No, but it
feel like
wasn't. It might be dumbed down
In this
compared
book,
to.
it was pretty clear.
It's
In
pretty
this
No,
particular book,
he didn't
he
say
has
the
a
word
character.
though. He didn't say
He
it
has-
was bad, and so
No, yes, he has a character in this book saying,
oh yeah,
this thing is
In this
clearly
book, yes.
bad. I think it's Durant. I think it's Damask.
Yeah.
It's completely
Yeah.
unambiguous.
yeah, he's
But
very
that-
straightforward.
it doesn't make it offensive though. It's not dumbed down to the point where it's like he's treating you like a child.
No, I don't.
though.
No, I don't think it's dumbing it down. I think it's a response to people that say that you cannot leave these kind of things open to interpretation, because then
Yeah.
people will read your book and will become serial rapists because it happened in your book.
Well, I mean, there's people who unambiguously love Karsa Orlong, and that is kind of disquieting. But like, here's my thing. So there's like, all right, I had like 2 or 3 things in this point. Like, one thing though, I would love to see The God Is Not Willing as like Marine propaganda, like Jen said,
Yes.
and like go all over the top, like in the Starship Troopers movie, like Uncle Malik wants you, join the Marines. Like these like propaganda parts in between, and like how great the Marines are, and then you see all the
Would you like
all
to
the
know
crazy
more?
shit they do, and do all the war crimes, like blowing up all the Tevlar and stuff. And like the other thing that I wanted to say is like, I guess the main other thing that we missed is kind of on the end of it, because all the slaughter, all the genocide that happens is because no one talked to each other. And that's like, and there's like, even like near the end, someone is like, if we'd only actually, sent in more people, talked to them, found out why they were leaving, we could have like saved us so much slaughter. We could have saved us so much like pain. And that's like the theme that we kind of dropped. Like, we need to talk to each other to figure out what's going on. And that's like another theme that is like really in there.
But they didn't want to talk to, because Elaid Theros was on his little revenge consequence.
Of course. Like, no one wants. That's not the. It's not just like the fault of the Malazan that they didn't talk. It's the general thing that like we as people seem to be really good at not talking to each other, and then like finding out in the aftermath that we,
which is a
kind
sign of the
up.
American novel as such.
I think what this is not even a book, honestly. I think in keeping with like Tom's technological industrial revolution thing, this is actually like a printout of the closed captioning on a video, on a propaganda video in world.
Yeah.
It's like a YouTube video captioning.
What I will say is that the thing about the Library of New Morn has me really intrigued, because during the Crippled God, Grundle is having a soul taken dream, and he finds a panther soul taken. And when he asks her where do you come from, and she says from New Morn, and he is like, but Morn is a ruin, so she's from the past. But no, she's from the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the Morn that is supposed to be a Shamal citadel goes into ruin, and then is reborn. So what I think is that The God Is Not Willing is written after the Malazan Empire has collapsed from a civilization in New Morn.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, because you have like some of those epigraphs and those quotes are all about like the latter half of the Malazan Empire and stuff. And you can only title your books that way if you've seen it fall.
The late rule of Malak and the like,
Oxen, you were going to jump in on that.
Yes. You were...
Not really. I was just, I don't know, giving affirmation to what Niferok was saying.
Okay,
I don't know.
good.
But I've been thinking the same thing about the Library of New Morn, that it must have been written, or basically it's written from the future, and whoever is writing that is looking back. And that's why we have the Library of New Morn that does not exist yet during the events of the book itself. So yeah,
we're almost 2 hours into this thing, and we haven't even asked the Counselor of Moonspawn about Animander Rake showing up in this.
He annoys me so much.
But before I forget, there's another thing I wanted to mention. It has been one of my favorite moments of the book, and it is the simple fact that the ox has a magical aura.
Boom, straight up.
Yeah.
And it's also an ochre ox.
And I know I don't want to ruin it.
Yes.
Oh my God, yeah.
word
Obviously
ochre
it has to be
happens
ochre,
2
right?
times in the book. One of them is to describe the skin of the hide of the ox.
The magical ochre ox. Yeah.
Noticeable lack of potsherds for sure.
No,
That's something.
there's a
Yeah,
jagged
no
skull
potsherd.
that got broken.
Oh no,
into it.
Erickson doesn't say potsherd anymore. He says something resembling a broken pot.
Yeah, that was the jagged skull. Annex Pro was beating its head in.
Yeah.
Until it
But yeah,
resembled a
anyway.
broken pot.
Yeah. No
By the way,
potsherd.
for the
broken.
people who are wondering why I pointed out the ox, it is because my name in Iskar's Discord is Oxenseller. So there's a backstory to that, but we're not gonna get into that here. So anyway, it was just
now
fun
you go
for me
ahead and talk about
personally.
Amanda Ray, please, because we need to.
Yes.
You need to tell us why it's great, and then I can tell you why he sucks.
I will slap you, Raph.
Yeah, and Ruthan isn't even here.
Is that Raph or Ruth?
Yeah.
Rough bad. Anyway, I have to say I didn't really see it coming that he would show up in the book. But I think the fact that, or is it a fact? Maybe, I don't know. Him still being there in some way, shape, or form is what I mean, it didn't really surprise me because in the Malazan world, nobody is ever truly 100% gone. So I figured that Rake he was probably going to be still around in some way. And, you know, it is said in All the Hounds that he's basically scattered into the realm of darkness. And I guess that means that his spirit or his soul must still be there in some way. So yeah, I wasn't
part of
surprised.
Elemental Dark.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
my headcanon.
Yes.
Is that wherever there is void and empty and true darkness, in some form, his essence is there.
Yeah.
You know what?
And I mean,
what he didn't
I think
say.
it makes perfect sense based on All the Hounds. So, and I mean, it's interesting. I tried to put myself into Banger's head here. And I mean, he sees this blood oil sun or whatever that was, and he thinks, okay, yeah, we need to extinguish that Ortataral influence. So we need somebody who is able to wield an Elder Warren. And we also need somebody who can get up there. So who can get up into the sky? Somebody who can
You'd
fly.
have thought of a ladder.
Who can... Yeah, but I mean, who can fly and wields Elder Magic, a dragon? So yeah, I guess it makes sense. And then he has to think of a dragon he actually knows about. So the logical conclusion is Anoman Drake.
Well, he has that tapestry in his mind. He could just as well be
No, I think the problem was that he had to think of someone he knew about. If he could have just imagined a dragon, it would have been better. But because he didn't know what a dragon looked like, because he'd never see one, he had to draw on this like tapestry of Anamanda Reagan. That's what sort of pulled.
The only thing is I've ever seen myself on dogs.
Not to say that was a problem, but that's kind of what got him into trouble there with Rake.
Yeah, but like my problem with that scene of Anamanda Rake is it felt so much like Erickson wanted to drag his favorite character on stage once again, and he's like the worst like do-gooder I've ever seen. It's like, we need to save this woman, and no other words are necessary. And then he flies up and is like, come on, Rake, be a bit more, be a bit less.
You wanted him to be, he's dead,
like,
Raph. What do you want? There's no self-interested thing.
What is your problem? What is your problem with Rake being a superhero? I mean, what's the problem with that?
Is this
what is it? I mean, yeah.
I don't know if it's your problem, but my problem is that Rake, for millennia, imprisoned all kind of life forms for all of eternity to torture inside his sword, and then no other words are necessary. Seems a bit out of character.
Did you reach the part in All the Hounds where it is explained why he does that with the sword?
No, he hasn't. He has started.
And do you know who destroys? Well, this is a spoilers. Do you know
whoa.
all this?
So what do you want to? What
you don't know. You don't know what's behind that.
I'm going to learn for myself soon.
You're missing some context on his character.
There we go.
You're missing a lot of context on his character.
I think the interesting part of Rake coming back was not his appearance itself, but the fact that he brought this horde with him, this mob of
people who are out for revenge.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Like everyone still hates him because like the interesting part though is like when we read Dust of Dreams and Beyond's, like sort of like almost everyone who survives like what happens in the sword into all the Hounds kind of shows up somewhere afterwards. So Rake showing up somewhere doesn't, surprise me because Kharkanas showed up and stuff like that. But like all those people are like, so we've done that thing, and maybe what Rake did with the sword and everything was kind of okay or whatever, or it made sense, but still we're gonna hate this guy's guts. We're gonna fight him.
Jen still hates him.
I don't think they're real. This is Makra. I think they're a manifestation of the guilt and the sort of like Rake's own change that he carries around with him. Like all
Rake's
of those
guilt,
expectations of his people, of his followers, of the guilt over the people he's killed, and all of that. I think that he's manifesting this, that it's not those people coming after him, but it's his own and just sort of the weight of all of the burdens he carries with him chasing him.
Counselor,
it just felt a bit like too pathos laden for me when he showed up, and I'm like,
Raph, I really don't get you, Raph. When it is too nihilistic, you have an issue, and when it's too pathetic, you also have an issue. There's always an issue.
I'm a Jew. We complain unless things are run.
You were saying, Counselor.
What was the counselor?
Counselor,
I need to speak. People are slandering my husband. Anyway, first of all, Jen, I love that thought of yours that it's basically Rake himself who is kind of creating this army of people who are following him. That makes so much sense. And also, even if it's not, I think it's definitely possible that quite a lot of the people who have been imprisoned in Dragnipur actually are crazy now, that they basically broke due to their imprisonment. And I mean, it makes sense. Imagine being chained in that sword for millennia. I mean,
surrounded by chaos.
He was.
But also, I need to get back to that statement that Rake saving a single life just because there's no other reason needed than the saving of a life. It is perfectly in character. And because if you consider that he carried the burden of Dragnipur for that whole time, because it was, I guess he perceived it as necessary for upholding the balance of the world, and also him carrying the faith of his people, and then in the end sacrificing himself to resolve that that situation.
You just
and
keep going.
No,
I thought we were allowed to talk about the main series anyway.
Yeah, you can.
Just for the record, because I really don't remember at this point. In I think it is Memories of Ice. When they're in front of Kapostan, Rake. There's this scene where Rake wants to kill a couple of the
Women of the Dead Seed and Iskar and Whiskey Jack, and
that doesn't set. I'm not quite sure if Rake wants to kill them with Dragnipur or
with Dragnipur.
Yeah, okay, I think so.
Because if he does so, when they are definitely so out of their mind, actually, at least in my mind, quite similar to Salis, I'm really interested to find any kind of apology, justification, or whatever that would justify that.
There is a very basic difference.
You can't justify it, but there is a reason.
Yeah, there's a reason.
I mean, there are several elements here. First of all, there is this aspect of him not wanting Whiskey Jack to, or anybody else to have to kill them, so
Carry the
they
burden.
don't have to live with the burden of having killed somebody in cold blood.
Yeah, but
Also-
why doesn't he just use, you know, a heavy stick?
Well,
Because-
he needs blood and souls for like for his sword. That
Yes,
he didn't
that's
invent
another
because
point.
he
And
didn't want to
also,
start.
Rake
Okay.
he's the wielder of Dragnipur, so the burden of killing with Dragnipur is his to bear. And he is very aware of that. He knows what he's doing to those people he is killing.
Okay,
And
there's something
cannot-
actually happening inside the sword.
The women of the Dead Seed have magic. They have magic powers. Sarlis does not. Rake needs powerful souls with magic that drag the card, because if not, spoilers, the end of Toll the Hounds. So that's why he does it. But that's still,
the more powerful
but he
they
still
are.
knows. He still knows that that's unfair because those women didn't choose to become that.
So
I guess the other question though with Memories of Ice would be, if they are as insane as they are, wouldn't they do like the same thing that whatever the hound was that he killed, whose name the hounds that I like, the two that he kills in Gardens of the Moon, whose names I have forgotten. Like, wouldn't those women be as insane when they enter the sword and thus not actually help, because like actually more hinder? Because
Everybody
too insane.
Oh,
Does he know that the hounds?
yeah, I don't know. You guys cut out
If
for a
Rake
minute
knows
there.
if the hounds escaped. Yeah, he knows that because he tells Lady Envy at the end of Memories of Ice that Paran went inside his sword and sent the two hounds into the realm of shadow. So he's definitely aware of that.
He ran. No, he sent them into the hound. He sent them into the
darkness.
realm of darkness. He doesn't send them to shadow. That gate doesn't go anywhere.
No, they become like dark hounds right after that. And then the most interesting part, and I know you guys didn't finish all the ice stuff, but to me, it throws a huge dagger in one of the main Assail theories that's out there, because when he comes back, you know, what he doesn't say is, I've been chilling on Assail.
That's true. That's that. I read that and I was like, that's interesting. But on the other hand, I'm still not convinced that that character in Assail is spin-off Duraf. That doesn't make any sense. Like, why did he get like a dye job for his hair? Why did, like,
because
when did
she has to
die?
she has to keep some kind of consistent branding, dude. It's all copyright issues.
Well, that second one is like suddenly you find this mysterious dark like Ticed Andy with white hair.
When you're trying to stage a comeback of a religion, Raph, it's key to cleave to like classical imagery for sure.
My point is that if he has white hair,
so what you're saying is he's basically wearing the loincloth and sandals and the beard.
100%, bro. That's his crown of thorns, homie. Straight up.
So I don't think what happened inside the. I don't think what happened inside the dream was real at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that it's like watching what happened to Saren Pedek explained through Bingar's perception of how it worked.
So these are all just conjuring.
But his perception affects things in the real world, and I mean, you know, Annex Fro and Stillwater were
afterwards. That doesn't make it afterwards. It still doesn't make it the actual Animander soul. It's his idea of how that would behave.
Possibly, but then for Stillwater and Annex and the rest, his idea of like it's possible to pull others into his
right
manifestation.
He left early.
It doesn't matter. The point is that when you make that kind of ritual with Mokra, you're essentially summoning Rake. So that's a summon of Rake that takes the shape of whatever illusion Mokra is doing.
It's kind of like the quick bend thing in Memories of Ice, right? Where it's like it was illusion at first, but then it really tore up all those dudes or whatever.
Yeah, it's like like Inception. Like you create the dream, but then the dream takes life.
Yeah,
and it's populated by ideas of the host and stuff like that.
At least our reality anyway in Malazan, right? Kind of.
Love it.
But I think this is a really weird way of doing illusions. I mean, Industry in Bangor was deciding between a black and a red dragon, and the red dragon was just too vicious and the like. And all he knew about the black dragon is that it was black, and
we lost
it happened to be happened to have appeared somewhere, possibly. And suddenly it is this special person carrying around this old guild that Bangor knew nothing at all about.
Bangor knew who he was.
We lost you guys on video.
That's why he bailed.
By the way, batteries.
He knows who the black one is.
Yeah, he was
because he's like he's like, okay, I'm not talking to the Blackwind Lord.
Yeah,
exactly.
Maybe.
And by the way, there's another point I wanted to address when it comes to the saving of a life. And it is the Taist'ani perspective and personality. Because in Tor the Hounds, there is this scene where this priestess woman approaches, or was she a priestess? I think so. And she's talking to the high priestess. And the high priestess basically tells her, we are the Taist'ani. We do not demand a price. If we decide to help somebody, then we're going to do that.
I know.
And that is exactly what Rake does in that scene, and God is Not Willing as well. He just decides to help them out.
Yeah, it still comes across as grandstanding, though. Anyway, so here's my theory. Here's my theory.
How did you make that about you?
Stop.
Here's my theory, though. How you can actually keep the Assail theory alive. Because this is inside Makra.
Raph's not giving it up. He's not gonna
Hear me out. So here's my theory. So this is happening inside Makra. This is happening inside Bangor's knowledge. Bangor knows that Rake dies in Darujhistan. He doesn't know about the other stuff. So his version of Rake that he summons in his own Makra idea and stuff is his version of Rake. It's not the definitive version of Rake.
It's flimsy, Raph. It's flimsy.
I know.
I love it.
Niflrog have to go?
I don't know.
I think he just got up to do something, I think.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear, because I know the environment one's a big one. I think Philip Chase is going to have a lot to say when it comes to that, because he always finds an environmental theme in there, and he'll probably love this one.
Well, the environmental thing is super huge in the entirety of Stephen Erickson's writing, whether it's Kharkanas or the Malazan Book of the Fallen, or now it's he's very much into let's not overhunt and let's maybe not destroy the planet.
But where in Malazan, in the Book of the Fallen, it felt more like a warning. This feels more like it's too late. Here's how we need to deal with it when it hits us, when it blindsides us, like it does in the book.
Yeah, it takes it as a foregone conclusion now.
This is happening. It's too late, and it's almost prescriptive in its philosophizing. This sort of we need to look ahead now because.
Yeah, it's I tried to warn you before, and then you were like, "Yeah, but cheeseburgers," and now you need to start with plan B.
Which totally makes sense, because when he finished that was like a decade ago, and awareness of the climate thing has changed in the last 10 years in at least parts of the world,
some parts. Oh my gosh, dude, we've gone on for so long, and now I have to go to the bathroom. I'm thinking we should just call this a pause for what might be more eventual discussions, and I wish Niflrog was here to call it a day, but we'll just call this installment number 1, and I'll upload this behemoth and run out all my bandwidth limitations for the month here in just one single shot, and I think everyone's gonna love it. But there's so much meat still on this bone relative to the to the list of bullets. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. So what I'm going to do though is, because I know everybody's probably going to want to put out their own individual content. So I'll have links to Quick Gen and Niflrog and Really Good and Kind and the Counselor of Moonspawn and Raph and Tom as well, who brought the mustard this time. So Tom, start a channel. I'll put a link down below for that one as well. And yeah, we'll be in the Discord nerding out for days to come, and we'll leave it there until the next one.
Yeah, like Jen and whoever wants to stay for talking about Discworld will stay, right?
And join Raph's buddy read for Discworld, because then you could just go straight back to back streams and just spend hours talking about books with us. So yeah, thanks again.
Wait, which was the next? Which was this one?